My name is Alex McDougall. I'm the CEO of Stablecorp. We're a digital money and digital asset infrastructure business. We issue Canadian dollar stablecoins and soon to be American dollar stablecoins as well. I think the ongoing institutionalization of digital assets in general is a huge key theme. And obviously in a situation like we're at today, you can really see the progress that's being made across traditional finance, across payment rails, across regulation, and really starting to grow up the space. And that's a really cool thing to see, because getting past that sort of niche crypto market into the real market of broader finance is just a huge increase in the size of the market and the sophistication of the market. The impact of kind of the key themes of kind of institutionalization and sort of evolution and growing up the industry. I think you see it in sort of the stuff we take for granted in non-digital asset industries. So banking, regulation, auditing, just all of those things that are sort of boring and okay, that's just a cost, aren't really there in digital assets and are starting to become more and more a part of the way that we kind of build businesses. So I think in a way, it's sort of just everything's getting more boring. And in a way, that's really exciting. A lot's at stake, right? And it's interesting that this has become a wedge issue and a talking point. And in a way, it's nice for the industry that we matter that much. In a way, it's kind of frustrating that we're sort of being used as a bit of a football or a political football. But like somebody needs to take a position and take a stand and clarify this, because it's been bounced around a lot. So I think we'll see digital asset regulation and registration be a big topic of contention throughout the election. Whether that turns into actual policy once the election is finished, that remains to be seen. And also, obviously, what impact and knock-on impact that has on Canada. There's a certain amount of tone from the top that really matters, right? And what people are saying over and over and over, and what the talking points are from the elected officials and from the elected leadership. It really does have a trickle-down effect on just how legitimate the industry seems. If it's a thing that's important to our highest elected officials, then it's worthwhile to educate yourself. It's worthwhile to look into. It's worthwhile for big financial institutions to take the steps to educate and build POCs, knowing that it's sort of part of the main fabric of how we're building our countries, but whether it's Canada or the US. So I think it's really important that it becomes a talking point, that our elected officials are educated on it, and that it becomes a election point that turns into a policy point that really has the research and the persistence through it. Absolutely. The BlackRock ETF just cleared $20 billion. Obviously, in Canada, we're not usually first adopters, but we were first adopters on the ETF. So we actually have sort of 18 months of extra data on how the ETFs go. And you've seen that be a huge difference for institutions, because there's two challenges to buying Bitcoin. One, understanding the value proposition, why it has that value, why it is an asset, all of that stuff. But the second is actually setting up the infrastructure to do it. And by being able to knock out one of those challenges and just say, hey, I can buy it in any brokerage account and I can do the Sharpe ratio analysis and all the typical finance stuff, but still have exposure to the underlying asset, it just builds a bridge, right? It just builds bridges backwards to where everything is and to where assets live today. Yeah, I think using them as collateral, it's significantly easier to use an ETF or it's a traditional type of security process as an asset for collateral rather than native spot BTC or digital physical BTC. So I think the entire amount of traditional commerce that's built on top of digital assets takes a step forward by having it in such an easy regulated form. I just think it fits a lot more into AI-based distribution patterns for traditional assets. Like there's just so many things and tools that have been built in traditional finance that now fit right in with an ETF as well. Taking all the way back to the Satoshi white paper from 2008, payments has always been sort of priority number 1, 2, and 3 for digital assets, but we really haven't made that much actual progress with payments from now to then. You've seen a lot of sort of peer-to-peer payments in countries with challenging currency regimes. Argentina, you've seen Tether sort of stake out a niche around being able to manage some of those currency challenges and have the US dollar utility. But I think it's really early days. I think there's a big change in legal structure, in regulation, in the types of connectivity we have with advanced payment rails in countries that have stable currency regimes like Canada. And we're right on the verge of all of those things happening, where we start to go from the 10 trillion settlement of crypto land into the 1,000 trillion settlement of regular payments. So I think the rhetoric that we've been sort of saying for 10 or 15 years now since the Satoshi days is finally starting to come true. But it's been a lot of infrastructure. And again, it's a lot of the boring stuff. It's blocking and tackling. Yeah, I think regulatory harmonization, listening to best practices from other jurisdictions, making sure that we stay connected between our regulators, our elected officials, and our leaders of industry, and that we have those opportunity for open, frank, honest dialogues, and there's constructive policy being built around those. I think that's really the key, because we're all entrepreneurs, right? We can build systems and we can build businesses in anything, but we need to know what those parameters are for us to build our businesses around. So I think that's really foundation number one, is setting clear regulatory guidelines, making sure you're in communication with the global standards, and making sure that this borderless asset doesn't become regionalized by differences in regulation. I think Bitcoin, it's funny because it was the first one, but it's also sort of the most futuristic one. I mean, it's so disconnected from regular payment rails, regular currencies, regular valuation propositions. You've seen it called an inflation hedge, digital gold. There's all of these different things that we're trying to figure out what Bitcoin is. I think a lot of digital assets has been sort of stepping backwards closer and closer to where people are today. Whether it's digital collectibles, whether it's digital versions of dollars, just things that make the value proposition simpler to digest and start to actuate. Where it takes you're just getting the technology, but it's something that you already kind of understand. So I think Bitcoin will forever sort of live out here as the potential platonic ideal of where we're trying to get to with digital assets. But a lot of what we've built in the middle is just efficiency mechanisms, simplification mechanisms, and stuff that has utility today as we sort of build that bridge out to a potentially fully decentralized future. I think it's growing, and it definitely, I think that will be what characterizes sort of the next wave of evolution of pricing and of adoption from digital assets, is more and more people looking at more the boring kind of financial aspects of Bitcoin, of what it does to a diversification, what it does to Sharpe ratio, things like that, and saying, you know what, I don't really understand it, but I have enough of a history track record that I'll put half a percentage point of my client's money in there. So I think that having the success of the ETFs, starting to have that pricing track record, starting to have that institutional adoption, leads to a lot more sort of naive usage by financial asset managers in portfolios and in broad portfolios. And again, it does not take that much broad adoption to make a massive difference for what is still a relatively niche asset like Bitcoin. Just keep going on. We've been saying and building a lot of the same things. The industry is large for, as I mentioned, since 2008. The themes of what we're trying to build in blockchain haven't changed, but the technology has just gotten deeper and deeper and deeper and better. And every bull run, we do something a little bit better and a little bit better. So it can be a frustrating industry when there is sort of those lack of basic services, access to banking, unclear regulation, access to audits, but just keep going because we're building something really special.